What up, though? Welcome to Throwin Stones alongside Ryan Griffin. I'm Matt Basson. If you don't know, you should know. We talking hoops and not just our beloved Pistons. Got a lot of college March Madness well underway. First round done, second round done. We're going to be getting into the third and fourth rounds. Before we do all that, got to remind you to like and subscribe on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, full episodes on YouTube. All right, Ryan, let's get it. 1's struggling in this second round of the NCAA tournament. First tournament since the expansion, Ryan, in 1985, where there wasn't at least one number one seed to win their second round matchup by double digits. We'll start with Gonzaga. They held on, defeated Memphis, came back, trailing 41-31 at halftime, and this is right after 16 seed Georgia State stayed with the Zags until what? About halfway through the second half of their first round game. So a big struggle until Drew Timme decided to gather his team, pointed the scoreboard at halftime, saying, I'm sure a whole heck of a lot of things that we can't say live on the air, but basically this is not who we are. You better start fighting harder. And he led the charge. 21 of his 25 points came in that second half, Ryan, to lead Gonzaga back to a win over Memphis, 82-78.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive that they were able to come back because Memphis, I mean, they're a good team. They were really bad to start the year. And they, kind of playing your way all the way up to a 9 seed is pretty impressive in and of itself after the way that they started. But they're kind of a hot 9 seed, or like a better team than a 9 seed would have you indicate. And Gonzaga was able to do what they've done in the tournament for their 7th year in a row now, I think, of making the Sweet 16.
Yep.
And being able to advance past that first weekend, usually as a 1 or 2 seed, because they always are hovering around 30, 31 wins. So for them to be able to kind of keep that consistency, it's a team that's been there before. Most of them, I know Chet's obviously a freshman, but Mark Few's been there. Drew Timme's been there. It's a program that's played in multiple national title games the last 6 years. So they're experienced, and I think that experience helped show, against a Memphis team who was pretty young. Penny Hardaway, still not much experience really at all. I think this is his first tournament experience as a head coach. So they were able to take
last year or the year before, whatever non-COVID.
Oh,
year.
Yeah. And they so they're able to take that punch in the first half and then come back out in the second half, regroup, and then close out that game down the stretch.
Man, Drew Timme putting this team on his back, Ryan. Third player in the last 30 NCAA tournaments, joining Shaq in 92, Blake Griffin in 09, to have at least 25 points, 10 rebounds on 60% shooting in back-to-back games in the NCAA tournament. Man, literally put him on his back, but he had a little bit of help. Andrew Nembhard with 23 points, Rasir Bolton with 17 as well. And, after about 10 minutes remaining, Gonzaga kind of got control and just, it wasn't comfortable. But they were able to keep Tennessee just at a little bit of arm's length to go on and win this game, even though it was tied at 66 late. But the Zags able to survive in advance, and that's literally the name of the game. Next up for them, a tough task, taking on number 4 Arkansas in the Sweet 16. Kansas, another one of these ones struggling, defeating Creighton 79-72. It was a 1-point game at half. The most impressive thing to me about this, Ryan, is that Creighton did this with literally 6 guys, 6 players. That's all they had to go against Kansas. You had 3 different players play the entire 40 minutes, 1 go for 38 minutes, and just for a team that didn't have people because they lost the Big East player of the year earlier in the season to risk their point guard in Ryan Nembhard. No, I don't even know if he's going. We'll have to find out if he's related to Andrew Nembhard of Gonzaga that we just spoke about. But they lose 7-footer Ryan Kalkbrenner to a knee injury late in their win over San Diego State. So 6 guys, and somehow this team, who were not good from three-point range, were able to connect on 12 of 28 and really put a scare into the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I mean, when teams start doing things that, you don't expect or that you don't think they can do, it really switches around the entire game. Like if Shaq just went out here and started bombing away three-pointers, it'd be it'd be really tough to stop because you game plan for this specific thing. And I probably Kansas just assumed that they would like run, they'd run out of gas eventually, right? And I think as a 1 seed, you can get kind of complacent in that regard, or maybe these 1 seeds just aren't taking these 8 and 9 seriously, figuring that they should just have like a cakewalk, to the Sweet 16, because I think all of these 1 seeds, probably except for Gonzaga, have shown just all year, they're really not infallible. And not that, Gonzaga went through the regular season undefeated either. But this was a year, at least I think a lot of people felt, where they kind of knew who the top 2 or 3 teams were, but there wasn't like a UNC in 09 or what people might have thought about that Duke team, with Zion and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish and everybody else, where you didn't just look at one team and think, oh man, like this is the stuff. This is the team to beat. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that play out in these rounds, specifically with, again, some of the lesser 1 seeds, if you want to call them that, whether it be Kansas or, Baylor, who I'm sure we're about to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, I'm assuming the same thing you're assuming, that Kansas probably thought with Creighton literally only have 6 guys to play with, that they would just eventually wear out and wear down. And I mean, that just really wasn't the case. Back-to-back buckets with under 2 minutes left by Creighton to make it a 1-point game with under 2 minutes to go. But Kansas was able to, again, survive in advance. Name of the game next up for them, a matchup against number 4 Providence in the Sweet 16. For Kansas, a guy I can't stand because he spent all of his time at ASU, but Remy Martin really led the way for them with 20 points. And thanks to this victory, Kansas has now tied Kentucky in all-time wins and 30-win seasons. Each program now. This is just odd. After all the years of basketball, how 2 teams could do this. It's like what we saw like years ago. It was with Duke and North Carolina with like number of wins, number of points scored in the game. Like everything was exactly the same. Sometimes sports gods have a sense of humor, but both programs now with 2,353 wins and 16 seasons with at least 30 victories. So props to Kansas. I can't stand Remy Martin, but the man definitely came off the bench and led the way for them to get them to survive and advance to the next round. The last one to survive and advanced, my Arizona Wildcats, got everything they could handle and then some from the Horned Frogs of TCU. Jamie Dixon, heck of a head coach. Not surprised. Arizona only led by 3 at the half. Arizona is one of the biggest teams in basketball, period. They're the biggest team left in the NCAA tournament. You would think that would mean that they would dominate inside the paint. Ryan, you watched this game as well as I did. Arizona did not dominate inside the paint, settling for outside shots, playing right into TCU's hands, and the Horned Frogs took them down. And, if not for what some are saying, a controversial no call at the end of regulation, Arizona might be not playing this upcoming week and watching like you and I are.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona, they were shooting the 3 and they weren't making the 3 at all, right? 5 of 27 from 3-point range, under 20%, which is just kind of unbelievably tough for them to do. And I mean, credit to I hope I don't pronounce the young man's name wrong. Is it Koloko? 12 of 13. Koloko. Yeah, 12 of 13, playing 40 minutes, 28 points. And then, Mathurin, 30 points, another, playing 41 minutes. And these guys just gutted it out. It wasn't a good performance from Kansas, really by any means. I mean, they scored 85 points, which is great, but letting TCU hang in there, not using, like you said, what everyone thought their physical advantage would have been, right? If you just looked at these 2 teams, you could tell, oh, Arizona can just get closer to the basket and then dunk or lay it in all they want. And that was obviously not the case in this game, a much tougher test than I'm sure Arizona wanted. But, on the bright side, Matt, for your team, I think every team in the NCAA tournament, is going to need one of these games to advance unless you're just like an all-time great team, which sadly
like
for you,
North Carolina.
Yeah, sadly for you, Arizona isn't. But I think these are the type of wins, not only for your team, but for the rest of the 1 seeds who did win, they make the rest of your tournament run, I think, honestly, even just a little bit more promising, because from that 16 seed like blowout game that then you can go ahead and win a dogfight, with a team that you're not expected to be in a dogfight with, but that you can close it out, in overtime and in the final minutes of a game to just, like you said, survive and advance.
Yeah, I mean, Benedict Mathurin absolutely put us on his back, because Chuck O'Banion Jr., son of UCLA great Charles O'Banion, career high 23 points for TCU. Eddie Lampkin, man, that's a big boy. And he was playing like a big boy for most of that game, and definitely gave our big boys everything they could handle. I hated every minute of it because I was really hoping for a stress-free night, because the earlier game for us, which we'll get to a little bit later, was certainly not stress-free. It was a great game, but it was definitely not stress-free. This game, right along with that, not a stress-free game. A very good game overall. 3-point game at halftime. Go to overtime. 5-point win in overtime. Survive in advance. You'll keep hearing me saying it. Next up for them is Houston. A little bit of a silver lining with this TCU game is that Houston plays a similar style of defense, and this may have gotten us ready for this Houston team. I don't know. It's going to be very, very tough to take on Houston in a couple days.
Yeah, I mean, that's a popular upset pick now, right? Maybe not when people first started filling out their brackets.
Nope.
But watching these games, getting this week to digest what we saw, from these teams and kind of recalibrate. It's a lot of people are picking Houston to pull that upset off, and for Arizona to be the next one seed to fall.
Yeah. And so 3 of the 4 ones advanced. The 4th one did not advance. Baylor, defending champs, fall to upstart. Can we call them upstart when they represent North Carolina? I don't know, but certainly when they're an 8 seed, I guess you can. North Carolina, 25-point lead in the second half. Then Brady Manick gets ejected. Caleb Love fouls out. Bears take advantage of 13 second half turnovers to force overtime. But in overtime, North Carolina took it again and end up knocking off the defending champion Baylor Bears 93-86.
This was, honest to God, one of the craziest games I've ever seen, like in my entire life. You're up 25 points with 10 minutes left, and you feel like the game's over at that point, because every game you've ever seen that was 25 points and only had 10 minutes left has been over, right? It's ended in at like the very worst 10 or 15-point victory, and Baylor came all the way back, and North Carolina took that punch from the defending national champion, which it's weird to say that you can impressively dodge an all-time choke job, but they did. Because giving up the 25 points, never want to do that. All-time horrible. But if you're going to give up the 25-point lead, you're probably going to lose that game. And then to do it, to come back in overtime and be able to, again, beat the defending national champions, a team that's been here before. I think at least that part of it was impressive. The collapse, not so much. It was great television, and it made for a fun watch. But absolutely nothing to write home about there. But again, I do think at the end of the day, it was impressive to kind of stave that off and shake off that stink before going into overtime, and then kind of imposing your will in that extra period.
Well, something to definitely write home about for Brady Manick. 28 points against Marquette when North Carolina absolutely rolled them. 26 against Baylor before he gets ejected. So he has 54 points on 9 for 10 shooting from 2, 9 for 18 from 3, and 9 for 11 from the free throw line. He is one of 5 Tar Heels ever with at least 26 points in consecutive games, joining Lenny Rosenbluth, Phil Ford, the great Michael Jordan, and Jay up for North Carolina. We got Blue Blood versus Blue Blood. They're taking on the 4-seed UCLA Bruins. So we have a very packed Sweet 16 as far as conferences. No league has more than 3 teams. Big Ten and SEC struggling. They're 2 of the bigger conferences, and all of their champions are out. Their regular season champions, Auburn for the SEC, Wisconsin, Illinois for the Big Ten, both gone. The league tournament champions, Tennessee and Iowa, both gone as well. But 9 different conferences represented. College basketball, definitely nothing like it. Way better than football in this instance, because everyone gets to play when it comes here. And speaking of everyone getting to play, we got a whole bunch of double-digit seeds still getting to play. Number 10, Miami. Number 11, Iowa State. Number 11, Michigan. And number 15, St. Peter's. The seed totaling for the remaining 16 teams in this dance, Ryan, is 85, which is astronomically huge. It ties for the third highest in tourney history, along with 2000 and 2018, and the upcoming 10 versus 11 of Miami and Iowa State, just the fourth in tournament history. So double digits making themselves known in this dance, Ryan.
Yeah, and if your bracket's busted, this is what you love to see, right? If you have like no idea, if you have no chance to win like your bracket office pool or whatever you're in, right? You're kind of just rooting for chaos, and that's what I'm doing. So I'd love to see a St. Peter's make a run at a Final Four, or really any team except Michigan make a run. I'd be I'd be all for, but I love to see it. I'm sure in a lot of these where I feel like in the Auburn region, I had them going to the Final Four. If there's a double-digit seed left there, that's absolutely who I'm picking to win.
Well, speaking of those Peacocks of St. Peter's, these guys, I don't know if they just have a vendetta against the state of Kentucky, but they certainly made it look that way as they took down number 2 Kentucky and then number 7 Murray State of Murray, Kentucky, to become the third ever 15 seed to ever advance to the Sweet 16, joining Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast in 2013, and Oral Roberts last year, but not really last year because last year's was canceled because of COVID. So they don't really count it, and they count the year before that as last year's. But just the third 15 seed to do it. And, you want to talk about guts and heart and toughness. This little school out of Jersey City has all of that in spades, Ryan.
Yeah, and I love it. I love that they're named the Peacocks because the only other team named the Peacocks is the ULA Peacocks in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. No other team has ever graced that nickname. And for them to be doing it on this stage, taking out, a traditional power in Kentucky, taking out, their state mate in Murray State, who most people probably know because John Morant went there. So you have a little bit of a national brand there as well. And, just keeping their run going. I'm sure their coach is going to have a much better job than St. Peter's in a few very short years, maybe even after this tournament concludes. But it's been an awful impressive showing from them, and to win a round of 32 game in a game that you're not favored in, shooting 23% from 3. They only made 3 threes the entire game, and they still won. So it's not like it was it's a fluky team who's out here bombing from deep and getting hot and all of that. They're doing it in some of the more traditional basketball ways, if you will. Out rebounded Murray State 38-31, and just kind of getting down and gritty with it, if you would. And I'm all for it. I think we're all Peacocks.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're defying their own convention. This is an offense that ranks 260th plus nationally in field goal percentage, and they connected on more than half of their attempts from the field and from beyond the arc when they went up against Kentucky. And they were able to play to Kentucky's weaknesses by trying to force Kentucky, who doesn't like to shoot threes. They packed the paint defensively and made them shoot from the outside, and it absolutely played in their favor, and they absolutely took advantage of it. And then against Murray State, where they are so bad on defense, they are so good on so bad on offense, they are so good on defense, and they held the Racers to 34% shooting from the field and just held on. They didn't trail in the final 30 minutes of the game, essentially. They just held on and kept keeping them at arm's length and pulled off yet another upset.
Yeah, I outscored them in both halves by 5. So, you kind of controlled the game from what seemed like start to finish.
So just so you're aware, for future teams out there, if you are a 2 seed and the 15 seed you are facing is a bird mascot team, be very afraid, because the 3 15 seeds to make it to the Sweet 16 are Peacocks, Eagles, and Golden Eagles. So if you got a bird, you better run. All right. We got to talk about our teams. And I say teams plural, even though one of them is not ours, but we have too many people that work with us and are friends of ours, and they're doing better than we are now. So we got to talk about the run the Michigan Wolverines have been on as of late. A 76-68 victory over Tennessee. They have now joined very special company because since the field expanded to 64 teams in 1985, only 6 schools have reached the Sweet 16 5 straight times. Now, there's an asterisk because last year's didn't happen, but it didn't happen, so it doesn't count. So, for the first time under Juwan Howard and 4 times under John Beilein, they have now made it to the Sweet 16 5 straight times, joining Duke, Gonzaga, Kansas, Kentucky, and North Carolina.
I think it's 2 with Howard and 3 with Beilein.
No, this was a from what the last year's was his first year, right? Juwan Howard's first year coaching was last year.
Yeah, and they made the Elite 8.
Not. Am I missing a year?
Yeah, they were in the Elite 8 last year because Baylor won last year.
What year was canceled?
The year before.
Oh, you're right. The year before. My bad. Okay, so 3 with Beilein and 2 now with Howard. You're right. My bad.
Yeah, I mean it's impressive. It's, I guess it's kind of a weird stat. I didn't know that they didn't expand it, until like 85, and then I saw that and I was like, oh, that's a weird starting point, and then you realize that's because that's where they started. But yeah, it's really impressive. They made a national title in that span as well. And even before that, they were having some success in the tournament before that. This like 5 years, that's probably really 6 or 7 type of run. They were in the championship game like 9 years ago. So this isn't like out of nowhere for Michigan, and they become a really solid basketball program over the last like decade plus since Beilein really started to get going. And it seems like they come alive in March, even when they don't have such a good team like this year, right? 17-14, an 11 seed who a lot of people had problems with either not being a 12 or not being in a play-in, and they kind of took it and ran with it. Now all those sins from the regular season are forgiven because they made the Sweet 16. Right now they're this great team again who was top 6 like to start off the year. And their mid-season follies, or really their entire season follies, are kind of thrown out the window because they're showing up when it matters most.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this team, before the Big Ten tournament started, never really got any momentum going. They win, they lose, they win, they lose, they win, they lose. They haven't won back-to-back games in what feels like 3 months. And so, you pick a heck of a time to break that streak. The NCAA tournament's definitely the time you want to break that streak. And they did it following their leaders. Hunter Dickinson was an absolute beast against Tennessee. 27 points, 11 boards, 4 assists. And Eli Brooks, continuing to step it up, had 7 of his 23 points in the final 3.5. They doing it with defense. I mean, you're talking about, having a perfect game plan. Tennessee does what? They shoot the 3 really well. Well, what was Michigan's plan? Run them off the 3-point line. They did it beautifully. Tennessee made 14 threes against Longwood. They made 12 against Texas A&M in the SEC championship. 2 for 18 from deep against Michigan this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an inverse of, a game we're about to talk about too, because Michigan was down, I think, 60-54 with just a few minutes left. And then they flipped it on. They made the plays that they needed to make towards the end. Eli Brooks hit that crazy shot to put Michigan up 4 with, I think, like a minute left or something. When after Tennessee had cut Michigan's lead back down to 2. And, it was a bunch of really good execution from Michigan, the second straight game where they were down at halftime, and then they came back and won, right? So what you've at least seen from about the first 2 games in the tournament is that this is a team that's not going to fold. They can go down at halftime and come back and still believe that they're going to win, which, as much as it hurts me to say, that is the mark of a championship team or a team that wants to, make a Final Four run. Because unless you're the aforementioned 09 Tar Heels, you're not going to be winning every game by 10 points. You're not going to go up into halftime up 8, saying, "Oh, we should really be up 14." So for Michigan to do what they did in these first 2 games it is really impressive. And now they get billed as this double-digit like underdog even though, their talent and even past March success probably earns them a little bit more respect than that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to see majors as your double-digit opponent because they know how to go through the grind of a season. They know how to play in close battles, and Michigan proved every bit of that against Tennessee. Like you said, down late and were able to come back and win. And, they are absolutely clicking at the right time. They have the talent to keep this run going. And, we'll be following the Wolverines closely as the tournament continues to roll on. For our Spartans, it's not rolling on anymore. We had the bad luck. You know that this was scripted. CBS and every sports fan wanted this. One more chance for Duke and Michigan State to battle it out in the NCAA tournament. I swear to God, we must be right behind North Carolina when it comes to Duke rivalries because Izzo and Krzyzewski have met each other so many times in the NCAA tournament. And just like most of the other times, Krzyzewski got the best of Izzo in this one. But, man, you got to give it to what the Spartans did because this has been a team that started the year beautifully. We were happiest. We were 14-2 earlier in the year, and everything was roses. And then it looked bad, real bad. And then they started kind of clicking again right at the end of the season. February ended. The February Izzo slump, which seems to happen with these Spartans for some reason, ended. March got going. The Spartans got going, made a good battle of Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. No moral victories, but we were seeing the team take better care of the ball, and they were fighting hard. And they gave Duke everything they could handle, including getting a 5-point lead with a few minutes left in the game. But in those last few minutes, Duke was hitting shots that Michigan State wasn't hitting. They just looked a little bit tougher. All the stuff that we talk about as Spartan fans of being tough in the last few minutes, keep chopping, our football team, all that stuff of keep chopping. Duke was able to do that where Michigan State wasn't. There were some, questionable calls, and you're always going to have those against Duke for some reason, but it wasn't the reason. Just in those last few minutes, Duke was just a little bit better than Michigan State, but man, what a battle.
So here's where I'm not going to give Michigan State a pass, is they were up 70-65, and they lost the game 76-85. I'm not a math major. That sounds like a 20-6 run that Duke ended the game on.
I mean, how many were free throws afterwards from fouling, though?
It's still unacceptable. We couldn't score. Duke was hitting some great shots all game. They had the one where they were up 75-74 with like a minute and a half left, and this dude just pulls up and hits a three right in somebody's face. Very well defended to put it up 4, and that's when you kind of thought, oh, like, okay, that's the game over. But even in the first half, when Michigan State, again, they came out, I think they got like a 9-4 lead in the first couple minutes. So from the gate, Michigan State was, like outplaying Duke. But Duke was able to keep it close with these tough turnaround jumpers, some of these like really crazy acrobatic finishes. And it was just that kind of frustrating day where I'm not going to fault Michigan State for Duke making some tough shots. That's going to happen. Tip your cap to them. I am going to fault them for faltering in the last few minutes, though, because they had it, right? They were up 70-65. You got some big games from important players. Gabe Brown played great in the first half, kind of disappeared in the second half. Marcus Bingham had 16 and 10, 3 blocks, 2 steals. He was doing what you wanted. Michigan State as a team only turned the ball over 7 times, which for them is incredible. Max Christie only had 9 points, but hit some really big shots when it seemed like Duke was in danger of pulling away. And Tyson Walker had 13 points and 5 assists off the bench. So for Michigan State, I think they played just about as well as they could. But instead of, having an A+ game, they probably had like an A or A- game. And that's what ended up costing them in the end, because they didn't have anybody that could guard Banchero. Roach really got going in the second half. It was the same thing with Williams. Duke was able to, kind of get what they wanted. It seemed like when they wanted. And I think that was the most frustrating part, was just kind of the second half and really last like 3-minute blitz that they were able to put on MSU.
I swear to my two teams have some similarities that drive me absolutely nuts, and they were both on display in these round of 32 games. Where I mean, Roach is there anyone more aptly named than this kid to get into very tight spaces and score? You know, he got down into the paint so many times and scored where we couldn't do that. Same thing with Arizona and TCU. TCU was getting into the paint and getting close buckets where Arizona couldn't do that. Same thing with Michigan State and Duke. Duke was able to continuously drive the ball, get near the hoop, and make plays. And Michigan State was not able to do that, settling for outside shots because we really couldn't get anything going in the paint. And this to me was that was the difference maker. Is Duke was able to get what they wanted from 5 to 10 feet from the basket, and Michigan State wasn't in those last few minutes, and that's where the game turned completely in Duke's favor.
Yeah, I mean, we had some no shows too, right? Julius Marble, a really bad game. Malik Hall, really bad game. Hauser, after dropping 27 points on Davidson in the first game and being the reason we were here in the first place, kind of reverted back to the Joey Hauser.
Duke did a good. They recognized it. Anytime Hauser got the ball on the block, they immediately doubled.
Like, and
even know where to go with it.
And even like I'm looking at the box score here, like Jaden Akins. Like, I know he's a freshman, but 15 minutes and he's got one shot attempt, and it was like a step back three at the end of the buzzer. So I'm just shoot more or like get aggressive, like drive to the hoop, get some fouls. It was frustrating. Michigan State only shot 12 free throws, made 11 of them. So it was a real good free throw shooting day for them. And Duke got to the line, to 21 times. The nine free throw difference, and at the end of the game, the score difference was 9 as well. So for Michigan State, you probably just want to see some of these guys be a little bit more aggressive. Hogard only shot 2 free throws. Again, Aiken 0 free throws. Tyson Walker did a better job getting to the line 4 times. But I don't know. I feel like our guards should have just attacked more, and I felt like we played guys a lot of minutes and didn't get a lot out of them, which I guess kind of makes the almost victory, even though the end score wouldn't really indicate it, a little bit more impressive.
I mean, you can't put too much on that end score. If all you see is the score, you go, oh, Duke won this game, pretty easily, winning by 9, almost 10 points.
Yeah.
No, that was 6 free throws in the final 25 seconds of the basketball game. This was not a 9-point game, but the free throw disparity that you just pointed out, that is something that played a factor. And look, again, I'm not going to blame the refs. However, there were plenty of times where Michigan State tried to get into the paint and make something happen, and there were no fouls called on plenty of plays that looked like a foul should have been called. It's always that way against Duke for whatever reason. They're really, really good, and they also get the benefit of the whistle. But for a Michigan State team with no lottery players, there's nobody going in the NBA lottery from this Michigan State team right now. Sometimes
not anymore.
Difference. Huh?
Not anymore.
No, not right now.
Better bring yourself back, Christy.
You got a bunch of guys in that Duke squad you're going to be seeing playing in the professionals. Sometimes that makes a difference. And, this Duke team in a very similar spot against North Carolina a few weeks ago, shooting outside shots and giving North Carolina the game. They learned from that. They didn't settle for that against us when they were down 5 late in the game. They kept driving. They kept producing, and it made the difference in the end. And, one final time, Izzo falling to Krzyzewski, but it was an absolute battle. And, again, no moral victories, but there is some hope for this Michigan State team if they're finally starting to play a little more like an Izzo team, because Izzo teams have a lot of heart, a lot of grit, and a lot of defense. And we started to finally see that happen in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. And most of this team is coming back next year for Michigan State. So hopefully these guys like Max Christie, like Hogard, like Tyson Walker, like Jaden Atkins, we can see them grow up even more and really take us to the next level next year.
You better hit the portal and find the center. Let's say that much. We keep getting bodied by these bigs.
All right.
Nothing else is going to matter.
Well, including speaking of getting bodied, literally, Ryan, did you watch the latest episode of Winning Time?
Yeah, I did. I bet Magic didn't.
Did you check that trunk?
Jesus,
man. We got introduced to Pat Riley, which was awesome. Not what I was expecting from Pat Riley, but that was awesome. A lot came out of this episode of things I had, they say at the end that some things were dramatized and we don't know 100% for sure. First of all, I didn't even know the Lakers were going for Jerry Tarkanian as their next head coach once Jerry West said, I'm done. Never even heard of that. And that was an interesting entire situation all on its own. Magic continues to be portrayed as a traditional professional athlete taking advantage of all the splendors that come with being famous and young and popular and all that. Anything stand out? Anything that you can talk about that stood out to you in this episode of Winning Time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd always just had the impression that Pat Riley was born cool, where if this depiction of him is anything close to real life, this man learned how to become cool. Apparently, after he tried to coach and after he was in the broadcast booth, because that is not at all what I expected.
Nope.
Pat Riley to look like, to sound like, or to act like. He can't even get into the forum for an interview.
Yep.
Because his name's not on the list. That was really it. I didn't know they were going after Jerry Tarkanian either, but it makes sense to me. And yeah, I thought Bus his undressing of an undressing we can talk about his undressing of Jerry West in the first kind of in the first scene where he's yelling at him was really funny to me.
And I mean, you're talking to a lifelong legendary, like the most legendary Laker at that point, and Jerry Buzz is like, "This is my family. Get out."
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing's fun because I wasn't alive during this run, so to see some of these characters be brought to life and guys that I didn't know about before, right? Like I knew who Jerry Tarkanian was. I didn't think he had any connection with the Lakers. I didn't know who Norm Nixon was. I didn't know the previous owner, Cook, or whatever his last name was. For the first name slips my mind. Zastro. I hope that was a real character. Something tells me that was just for TV, but that made me laugh a lot too. And like just kind of the big idea or the big deal that it was for for Norm Nixon to be in a movie. They mentioned Dr. J. I don't know that we really got to see Dr. J and this weird Bill Cosby cameo that we got. I don't know. There's a lot of things about this episode that made me laugh. Yeah, I guess that's just it. It was the funniest episode out of all of them to me.
Yeah, and there's a lot, obviously, we cannot talk about, but I didn't think the dichotomy of the phone call from Magic to his family back home was necessary.
He told his mom he found a church.
Yeah, that was really, I mean, that wasn't necessary. We didn't have to go that far. But folks, if you haven't jumped on this show yet, you should. It's definitely an entertaining one. It's got great people, great actors that if you've watched any kind of movies or television over the last 20 years, you'll see a bunch of faces and names that you recognize. It is absolutely worth it. It's not just about the Lakers, it's about the NBA at that time, the world at that time, or the US anyway at that time. Yeah. It's HBO, they do a great job with their shows in general. And this one I think is going to be joining that ranks.
Yeah, so the only other thing was the contract negotiation with Tark, where he threw out some number and then Tark's agent was like, over how many years? And Bus was like, well, per year. What are we talking about? Yeah. Like, let's just sign. So
he didn't have the money to pay it. He didn't care. I don't got the money right now. I'll get the money.
Find it later. Agree to it now, and then we'll talk about details.
All right. To end the episode the way we always do, NBA Twitter moment of the week. We had a bit of an argument on this one on what we thought it was. Ryan had his heart set on LeBron and Kevin Love, so we're going to go with that one. But I got to give a special mention to Shaq DJing, getting thrown a basketball, and hitting the free throw with the basketball. A little tiny one, obviously, into a crowd with a little tiny hoop. But, Ryan, set us up on Kevin Love and LeBron James.
Yeah. Well, LeBron James dunked on Kevin Love, his one-time teammate, his one-time subject victim, if that's what you want to call him. But he won a championship with them, the lone kind of a member of those Cavs teams, or that Cavs team that won a championship that's still stuck in Cleveland. But LeBron dunked on Kevin Love, and then I think it was after the game in the handshake line, Kevin Love like fake tackled LeBron as
headlock.
He ran up to him, to try to give him the business. And then on Twitter, Kevin Love said, "I'm not talking to LeBron for 48 hours," or something like that. It's something
he did
to that
not say
effect.
Talking.
No.
He said, "I'm not expletive deletive with LeBron for the next 48 hours."
So that was.
But it's always nice to see, every time they see each other, they do their same dap up that they did when they were teammates. And it's, for someone who's stuck there because he signed a long contract with Cleveland, it's nice to see Kevin Love smile and be happy every once in a while, even if it is at his own expense, which definitely happened with that dunk by LeBron. Look, props to Kevin Love for trying to take the charge. He was not going to get posterized. He was not going to try and jump with LeBron and try and block that dunk because he knew that was foolish. So let me see if I can try and take this charge. And if they get the poster, if you get to where LeBron is, you're not really going to see where Kevin Love is anyway. So it's the perfect situation for him.
Yeah, he just dunked on him. It wasn't he didn't body him or anything like that. But it was enough to make, Twitter react, and obviously enough to make Kevin Love react, because why do you got to do that? We're friends.
You're right.
I just follow you. Go to the line.
Yeah,
you don't have to dunk it.
You are not invited to the wedding anymore. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Throwin Stones. We'll be back on Thursday talking to you while the NCAA tournament is going on. Don't forget, like, subscribe, wherever you can find us, like where Ryan's pointing. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, full episodes on YouTube. We appreciate you all sticking with us, and we'll see you guys again real soon.
Go Pistons.